Somewhere deep inside you, a quiet voice has been whispering something you didn't want to hear. You're not the same anymore. You used to wake up with plans, lists, goals, deadlines. You chased improvement like oxygen. But lately, even the things that once thrilled you feel heavy. You scroll, you stare, you sigh, and then comes the guilt, that sharp, invisible weight pressing down on your chest. What's wrong with me? Why can't I care the way I used to? But what if Carl Jung would tell you this isn't laziness at all? What if it's something sacred, the beginning of a psychological rebirth? See, we've been trained to believe motivation is proof of life. But Jung saw motivation differently. He believed our drive comes from the ego, the part of us that says, I must become someone. And when the soul begins to awaken, that ego energy starts to crumble. It feels like fatigue. It feels like apathy. But Jung said it's the moment your old self begins to die. He called it the nigredo, the blackening stage of transformation, where all the illusions that kept you moving finally collapse. This stage isn't failure. It's alchemy. You are dissolving not because you're broken, but because you've outgrown who you were pretending to be. Think of your life like a cocoon. For years, your ego spun layers of identity around you. Career, success, image, approval. And now your consciousness has said, enough! It's melting the old shell so something truer can emerge. The problem is, this part doesn't look divine. It looks like nothingness, like waking up and not recognizing your own reflection, not physically but psychologically. The same routines suddenly feel foreign. The same conversations feel empty. You're watching your old life play out from a distance, and you can't remember why you ever cared so much. Carl Jung said that the psyche is designed for balance. When one side dominates the doing, the striving, the endless performing, the other side eventually pulls back, and that's what's happening to you. You're not losing motivation. You're being recalibrated. Jung wrote, the greatest and most important problems of life are all fundamentally insoluble. They can never be solved, but only outgrown. What you're feeling right now isn't meant to be solved. It's meant to be lived through. In modern culture, silence feels like failure. If you're not producing, you're falling behind. If you're not hustling, you're lazy, but the psyche doesn't care about your to-do list. It cares about wholeness, and sometimes wholeness requires collapse. Imagine a forest fire, devastating, destructive, but necessary for regeneration. The old trees must burn so that new life can take root. That's where you are. You're not unmotivated. You're in the burning phase of your becoming. And yes, it hurts. You might even feel lost, disoriented, ashamed for not being productive. But Jung would say you're mistaking the death of your persona for the death of your purpose. There's a difference. Your persona was the mask you wore to survive. Your purpose is the soul underneath it, waiting for you to stop pretending. That stillness you feel right now, that's the space being cleared for something more authentic. You're not lazy. You're between identities, the emergence. Then one morning, something subtle shifts. You wake up and the air feels lighter. The same world that looked dull and gray begins to glow again, softly, quietly. You find beauty in small things, the sound of rain, the sunlight on your hands, the way a stranger smiles without reason. You're not back to normal, because the old normal no longer fits you. You've outgrown the noise. This is the emergence. Your consciousness is slowly rising from the ashes of its own collapse, and what's emerging is not the old you with more motivation. It's a new you with deeper awareness. Carl Jung described this as individuation, the process of becoming whole, integrating both your light and your shadow. Before, you acted from what society told you to be. Now, you act from what your soul needs you to be. And that's why motivation starts to return, but it feels different, calmer, purer, aligned. You're no longer chasing goals to prove yourself. You're following purpose because it feels like truth. The mind, once lost in confusion, begins to focus again, but not out of panic, out of peace. You realize that what you once called laziness was actually the sacred pause. Your soul needed to update its direction. You don't want to do everything anymore. You only want to do what matters. You start saying no, not from anger, but from clarity. And this is where most people misunderstand your silence. They'll say, "You've changed," and they'll be right, because for the first time you're no longer addicted to chaos. You've learned to exist in calm. Carl Jung said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." That's what this rebirth is. Acceptance, not escape. You've stopped running from yourself. You've stopped hiding your darkness. And when you stop running, you stop needing to prove your worth through endless action. That stillness is not emptiness, it's mastery, the integration. Now the true work begins. Integration. Rebirth is not about destroying the old self. It's about integrating it, understanding why it existed, forgiving it, and learning from it. You realize the version of you that overworked, overgave, or overpleased was not your enemy, it was your teacher. It taught you what exhaustion feels like, so you could finally recognize peace when it arrives. The lazy you, the lost, you the tired, you, they were all messengers from your soul, begging you to return home. This is the moment Jung described as the union of opposites. Your ego and your essence begin to work together. You stop rejecting parts of yourself. You start to live as one integrated being. This is why your energy stabilizes. This is why your presence becomes magnetic, because you're no longer split between who you are and who you pretend to be. The new vision, once the fog clears, a new vision begins to take shape, not in your mind, but in your heart. It's quiet but undeniable. You start to sense what your next chapter will be. It's not about fame, money, or validation anymore. It's about alignment, authenticity, and truth. You feel drawn to things that nourish your soul, books that speak to your growth, people who reflect your light, and spaces that allow you to breathe. You begin to see through illusions. The old games of success and comparison don't tempt you anymore, because you've tasted something deeper. Peace, and peace, once known, becomes addictive. This is what Jung meant when he said, "Your vision will become clear only when you look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakes." You're awake now, and that awakening changes everything. The responsibility of awakening, but awakening comes with responsibility. You can't unknow what you now know. You can't go back to the version of yourself that lived on autopilot. The more conscious you become, the less you can tolerate lies within you or around you. That's why spiritually awakened people often feel isolated. Not because they hate society, but because they can no longer participate in its illusions. You start to crave authenticity. Even if it's lonely, you start to prefer solitude over shallow connection. You realize that being alone doesn't mean being empty. It means being full of yourself. For the first time, this is why your energy has changed. You no longer chase, you attract. You no longer argue, you understand. You no longer react, you observe. That's the power of rebirth. Not louder confidence, but quieter wisdom. The cycle never ends. And here's the truth most people never hear. Rebirth isn't a one-time event. It's a lifelong spiral. You will outgrow yourself again and again. Each time you'll think it's the end, but it's really the beginning of another layer. And every time it happens, you'll think you're lazy again. But you'll remember this truth. You're not lazy. You're transforming. Each collapse is a cleansing. Each silence is a seed. Each stillness is sacred preparation. Carl Jung's work reminds us that every stage of consciousness demands the death of its previous version. And if you can surrender to that process, you'll realize that rebirth isn't about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who you've always been. So the next time you feel tired for no reason, don't rush to fix it. Don't label yourself as lazy or lost. Sit with it. Listen, let the silence speak, because what you're feeling is not failure. It's formation. You're not stuck. You're being sculpted. And one day soon, you'll wake up and realize this quiet phase was not your end. It was your rebirth. There is no coming to consciousness without pain. Carl Jung.